Speak with clarity, 'cause there's too much noise around us. Or maybe it's just me. Will you stay with me? I'm lost here in America. Will you stay with me now? 'Cause I'm lost here in America. Stay with me. I'm lost here in America.
All right, hello everyone. Eric Marks here again with FindingMiddleEarth.com, and today the time has come to do my full review on the Fujifilm X-T3. Now, a lot of you have been waiting for this. I have been waiting for this. Literally, I've got this down to the last minute because right after this video is recorded, I have to pack this bad boy back up, sadly, and send it back off to B&H Photo. So speaking of that, huge shout out to B&H for sending this my way to review. I'm very upfront about this in every single camera review that I do, so I'm going to do my disclaimer right up front here. I am not sponsored or paid by B&H to do this. Just one of my friends on YouTube was able to get me in contact with B&H, so I got this really cool partnership where they just send me gear for 30 days at a time, and I get to review it, and then it's up to you guys whether it supports the channel or not. So they give me like a general B&H link that I put in the description, and anything that you buy through that link, whether it's a $5 box of lens wipes or it's a camera, it just lets B&H Photo know that I sent you there, and therefore it improves my longevity of the relationship with B&H Photo so that they can continue sending me gear. And this is still a pretty new relationship, so the more you guys help me out and support my channel, and the more that B&H sees me sending people over to them, the more gear I'll be able to review, the better gear I'll be able to review. I'm hoping in the future I can get a full GFX system to review because that's been a big request on this channel. So thank you all for the support you've given me so far. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the full review. Okay, so ergonomics is going to be the first category that we cover here on the X-T3, and moving forward throughout this review, everything will be into little categories, and we're only going to cover the most important through my experience. I'm not going to give you the most scientific, in-depth review you've ever seen for two reasons. Number one, this camera has been reviewed to death on YouTube, so I don't want to bore anybody. And number two, everything is based on my in-the-field experience. So these are just my opinions based on my use with the camera. Okay, so ergonomics. It's pretty much the exact same as the X-T2. As far as the feel of it, it's the same. The buttons, I can tell you, feel much more rigid than the X-T2. If you don't remember, I sold my X-T2 kit to my brother, so I've actually hung out with him a couple of times while I've had this, and we've gotten to put the X-T2 and the X-T3 side by side. And my brother, since then, has upgraded to the X-T3 as well, because he does a lot of video. So yeah, I can tell you that even the dials and the buttons, they just feel more sturdy, more rigid. But other than that, it's my same thoughts as the X-T2. I'm still lacking a deeper grip. I personally wish they would have gone with the XH1 build so that you have that beefier body with the grip. I understand why they didn't, because a lot of people do like the smaller footprint camera, so I get it. It's not like the X-T2 had a ton of complaints about the build, so why would Fujifilm change that if they didn't get a ton of complaints? But for me, I do wish it had the deeper grip. And other than that, I will say about the ergonomics, just the use of it, I did forget, because I'm a Nikon shooter, I did forget how nice it is to have the vertical flipping screen. So just in case anyone didn't know your X-T3 could do this, it also flips out vertically. So if you're shooting vertical on your tripod like this, it flips up this way so that you can compose your shot easily without having to bend down and look into your EVF or just contort your body in a weird way. Whereas my Nikon cameras and most other cameras just go out like this with the screen. They just flip out horizontally but not vertically. So that is one of my favorite parts about this camera as far as just the ergonomics and the use of it. Love that. So ergonomics, pretty short, honestly. The lack of the grip just, to me, makes certain lenses feel a little bit front heavy on this camera. Like I've been testing out the Fuji 80mm macro with the X-T3, and that 80mm macro is a beefy lens. So since this doesn't have much of a deep grip and much of a beefy body, it's just the whole camera feels very front heavy. So that's my only complaint, nothing huge, but overall, I love the smaller camera. You can tell it's built like a tank. I mean, this thing is weather sealed and it is built really well. I definitely don't have any complaints about the build quality. So with that said, let's go ahead and hop into the next category. Okay, so let's start with the autofocus system. That's probably the most exciting thing about this new camera. It is just wicked fast. As a matter of fact, if you asked me to sum up the X-T3 in one word, I would just say fast. It's very, very fast. So the autofocus system, from what I remember, I think it's a 2.16 million point phase detect AF system. That is just insane. Low light, good light, any kind of light that I've tested this in, it is insanely fast. The low light autofocus acquisition on this is insane as well. Even at like f5.6, I've tried it out at f8 on certain lenses. It's just so fast. It's amazing how dark this thing can focus in. I was walking around like a Christmassy shopping mall with my family, and I took this along just to grab some family photos along the way by this big Christmas tree. And this Christmas tree behind my daughter, it was huge, and it was just it was an insanely backlit situation because there wasn't a lot of light on my 2-year-old, and the whole tree behind her was just killed with lights. I mean, just everywhere. And I just knew that this thing wasn't going to work as well as I thought it would. But it proved me wrong instantly, and it locked every single time on her face. And then I thought, hey, while we're here in this backlight situation, I should test out the face detection. Face detection even worked really good in the backlit situation. However, which we'll talk about in a second, the eye detect autofocus did not work so well. But the autofocus in general, just the general autofocus system, so good. I've tried it with continuous. I've had a couple of my friends run back and forth. I've tracked dogs with it. I've tried some wildlife, and it is very, very impressive. So if there is one thing that has been improved just like an unimaginable amount from the X-T2, it is the autofocus system. So I love the autofocus, very fast. It has a lot to do with the new X processor for the quad CPU. Again, scientifically, what does that mean? It just means it's much faster. Everything about this camera is faster. It is faster at rendering, it is faster at previewing your photos, it's faster at in-camera focus, it's faster with the EVF. It makes the whole camera faster. Like it's just not, there's like no lag at all. Okay, so next here is the eye detect autofocus. So let's talk a little bit about that, okay? Sorry, I think a little screw out of my my little tripod plate just fell out. I'll have to look at that in a second here. So the eye detect autofocus here is very impressive. I love that Fuji added this because Nikon on their mirrorless and I think Canon on their new mirrorless, neither one of them added an eye detect that was any good. I don't remember if they added it at all, but I just remember if they did add it, I think Canon added something and it wasn't good. Nikon didn't add it at all. So it's cool that Fuji added an eye detect. And here's what I'm going to say about it, because I did a lot of testing with it. In good light, it's great. There's a few situations where it doesn't work so well. So we'll just skip to that, because it's a very good system. It is very accurate. But if it's a strong backlit situation where your subject is in shadow and you have a big light in the back, sunset, or a big studio light, or anything like that, some kind of light source from the back, that's where it tends to fail. And then if you're like me and you have what my wife calls squinty eyes, which means that whenever I smile for a picture, my eyes kind of disappear, it tends to always kind of put the eye detect box on my eyebrow. And I found that very interesting. So it's almost like if my eye squinted a little bit, it would just jump to my eyebrow. Not sure what that was. I'm not sure if everyone's found that or if it was just me and my testing. But that was strange. And if you're shooting at like f4, f5.6, doesn't really matter because you have enough depth of field to where the eyebrow and the eye are pretty much going to be in focus. But I tried shooting at like 1.4 on this 16 millimeter, and I tried the auto detect at like 2.8 on the 16 to 55 lens. And on that, you know, you're talking about a hair out of focus if you're talking about focusing on the eyebrow versus the actual eye. So on something like that, just use the nice little joystick and put the eye, put the box right over the eye just to make sure everything's tack sharp. If you're in one of those weird situations where someone has squinty eyes like me, or if you're in a backlit situation. Another weird thing is if someone's wearing a hat, just in lower light, I found that the hat kind of throws off the eye detect. Not a lot, it still works really good, but when the subject is kind of turning away, I noticed that the box would kind of jump off and then quickly get back on. So that was my experience with the eye detect autofocus. Very good. I would call it like 85% awesome, and just that little bit needs some fine tuning, which is just not a huge deal. So let's see here. Continuous AF in video. Now this is a big one because the X-T2 left me wanting more and more. I tried using the X-T2 multiple times as a vlogging camera, and it was never that great. So the continuous autofocus in the X-T3 is much improved. It's very, very good. It even has the eye detect or face detect autofocus in video, which is awesome that they finally added this. It's not quite on par with Canon's dual pixel autofocus, because that's still, in my opinion, kind of the leading thing in the industry. But I would say that the X-T3 is now the closest to it. This is very, very good. It's very smooth, and the eye detect and the face detect do work very good. But those same rules tend to apply where if you have a strong backlighting on your subject, or if your subject is wearing a hat, it tends to fail just a little bit. It'll just do a little bit of hunting and then get right back to the face. So it's not horrible, but if you're doing something very professional for a client, you might just want to stick with manual focus or a regular continuous autofocus and just really make sure that it doesn't lose focus. But I love that they added that and implemented the face detect and the eye detect. You can choose like eye detect right or eye detect left. In video, that's awesome. So, and you can do it in 4K. That's the most important part. So cool. And speaking of that, this camera shoots 4K 60, which is awesome. Let's see. The EVF is going to be the last thing in this category. There's nothing bad to say about it. It's almost no lag at all, nothing noticeable. It's like staring into a big TV screen, and still to this day, same with the X-T2 when I owned it, I prefer reviewing all of my images right on the EVF because it's just so bright and sharp, and zooming in, just kicking it into 100% real quick and looking in the EVF will get me a better idea of sharpness than looking on the screen every day. The screen on the X-T2 and the X-T3 I just feel has a lot of glare. I don't know why these screens just feel very glary to me, like it's really hard to see in daylight. So yeah, but it doesn't really matter because you can just stick your eye up to this big beautiful EVF and you're good to go. So there you go, that's autofocus and EVF. Let's go ahead and hop into the next category. Okay, so let's start with dynamic range in this category. Me being a landscape photographer, I'm probably harder on camera's dynamic range than most people are, so I really put it to the test in some funky situations. And I'm also probably going to be a little harder on this than most people because I shoot with the Nikon D850, which has incredible dynamic range. But I made it a little more comparable, and I've been testing it alongside my Nikon D7200. Okay, and this is a more comparable because this is Nikon's APS-C camera. It's actually pretty old, but it's more comparable than the D850. So this is what I've been comparing it against for landscape photos, believe it or not, is the X-T3 against the D7200. And unfortunately, dynamic range is where the X-T3 disappoints. Which is weird because they made a new native ISO for this camera of 160, I believe, which it used to be 200 on the X-T2. And I was hoping and praying that on the X-T3 they were going to be able to make it go to 100 or even like 64 like the Nikons do, and they were really going to focus on the dynamic range. But I guess in adding the 2 more megapixels or whatever it was with this and adding a lot of the other features, the dynamic range naturally just suffered a little bit. Now, it's not bad, it's not unusable, it's just a little bit worse than the X-T2. So here's what my testing showed, okay? At ISO 160 versus the X-T2 at ISO 200. The shadows on the X-T3 are just a little bit muddier, it's just a little disappointing because this is the new camera. So a little bit muddier, the highlights are about the same. The second that you take the X-T3 up to 400 or 800, it just completely loses every single time against the X-T2. I'm sure there's some big scientific explanation for that. I don't have the answer. I am more of an in-the-field reviewer. So I can tell you that I went head-to-head with this in the X-T2 multiple times with my brother's camera, and we stacked them up against each other, 800, 1600, 6400, all the way up, and every single time the shadow recovery and the highlight recovery of the X-T2 was far superior to the X-T3 as far as the detail you'd be able to recover. You could still recover the exposure values from the X-T3, but it was magenta, big huge magenta hues and color noise galore. So yeah, that was a little bit disappointing. Again, it's not a huge, a huge deal breaker because it's not like it got amazingly worse. It's just a little bit worse, and it'd be okay if they kept it the same or maybe a little better, but it did get a little bit worse. So hopefully it's something they might even can fix with firmware down the road. I'm not sure. Maybe they could drop the ISO to 100 and fix that. I wouldn't put that past Fujifilm because they do these amazing free firmware updates all throughout the year, and they give you all these goodies for free. So there you go. That's dynamic range. And then the ISO performance. So the lower noise at high ISO, that is about the same as the X-T2, maybe maybe a third of a stop better on the X-T3, which is weird, right? That it has a little bit worse dynamic range, but maybe a little bit better low light. That's just from my testing, shooting indoors in lower light a lot, because this has been a big month for family get-togethers and holidays, and so I've just taken this with me at every little family event. And 1600, 3200, 6400, they're all really usable on this. So yeah, I thought that this was about comparable to the X-T2, maybe a third of a stop better, just in my opinion. Nothing scientific about that. Just when I look at the photos side by side in Capture One, that's how it looks to me. So that is dynamic range and ISO. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with the last question, which is the big one, right? Should you upgrade from the X-T2 to the X-T3? Like, who is this camera for? So before we wrap this up, I was going to add video as a category, but my answer to this question, the whole should you upgrade, is pretty much video. So if you do video, this camera has so many amazing video functions. It does 4K 60, it does F-Log and 10-bit internal, and the video quality is exceptional. I did test the video quality out a good bit, and it really is exceptional. So I can say with full confidence that if you are a video-centric person and that's why you get into these Fujifilm mirrorless cameras, definitely would consider upgrading from the X-T2 to the X-T3, and you'll be very happy. If you're an XH1 user, I don't really know what to tell you, because I do kind of wish that this X-T3 had IBIS, the in-body image stabilization. I don't really know why they didn't put it in there. I guess it's because they didn't want to change the form factor of the body. And I know there's this whole big thing on the internet where people say you don't really need IBIS, but it is very nice to have. It's where the industry is going, so why not, keep up with it? I guess we'll have to wait for the XH2, to see if that catches up with the X-T3. So what I would say is, if you're an XH1 user and you want everything in here, but you don't want to give up your IBIS, just wait for the XH2. I'm sure it'll be everything that the X-T3 is video-wise, plus you'll continue to have the IBIS. But if you're an X-T2 user and you want killer video, this is a really good way to go. I just wish it had IBIS, wish they had gone with the XH1 form factor, but again, they're two different cameras, so I realize why they didn't. And overall, it's a Fujifilm camera. It's got the beautiful X-Trans sensor. It does have beautiful image quality. The video settings are incredible. That's my two biggest reasons is why you should upgrade to this camera is video and autofocus. Those are the two main areas where this camera has improved dramatically. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you have any questions or anything you would like to add, leave them in the comments. And also leave in the comments what camera you'd like me to review next, because I should be asking B&H for that, I guess, in the next week or so. Yeah, hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, in case we don't talk again. And thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.